Hey, you guys, and welcome back. So, I wanted to share another dream with you that I had recently. And before I do that, I wanted to clear up something from my previous video that I said about gardens or gardening. And I was talking about how this year people are experiencing a lot of issues with their garden. Some people are losing their garden due to pests, the weather being all over the place. And so things aren't growing the way they used to, or they're not growing at all, or they're growing but they're being destroyed, by the elements, by pests, by whatever. And so when I said that, I wasn't discouraging or trying to discourage people from gardening. If you can garden, if you can grow stuff, and if you don't, I encourage you to grow things, but I'm saying, grow as long as you can. But at the same time, don't neglect putting up things that you haven't necessarily grown, right? Because you may not be able to grow enough to sustain your family if you're not able to leave the house, if you're not able to go to work. They're talking about another lockdown. And not only that, but you just don't know what's coming. You may have a garden and it may be full of food, but can you go outside and tend to it? Can you go outside and harvest the fruit and the vegetables and all of that? Will you be able to do so? So I was trying to make the point, and I didn't finish my thought, that grow as long as you can, garden as long as you can, garden what you can, but don't neglect just going to the store and purchasing things that are shelf stable, that will be there to sustain your family if you need it. I know a lot of people talk about, GMOs and genetically modified foods and things like that. And that's all well and good if you have the luxury to be that picky. And if you can be that picky, I would advise you to do so. I would advise you to not purchase GMO and bioengineered foods or whatever. But there are those of us who have little to no money, or little to no extra money, to just put stuff back on a shelf. But if that's all you can get, if that's all you can afford, that would be better than starving to death. Because truth be told, you really don't know what is what. Even if somebody tells you it's organic, you don't know that it's organic. Even if somebody says it's non-GMO, that doesn't mean it's non-GMO. When you go to the store and it has that little label, you don't know what in the world they put in it. You just know that they put that little label saying non-GMO on the bag. So what I'm saying is, if that's all you have available to you based on the funds that you have, don't be ashamed to get that, because you would rather have that than to have you and your kids or whoever starve. Okay? So I just wanted to clear that up, because I didn't want people to think that I was talking down or talking against gardening. No, gardening is wonderful. It's excellent. If you can do it and you're successful at it, that is wonderful. I just wanted to make sure that people didn't think that the only way to get prepared is to garden, especially those who either can't garden or they're just starting out and they're not able to do enough to put enough back to supply their family with food. So, if you aren't able to do that, you're just getting your feet wet, you're just growing a few things, don't neglect just going to the store and getting some extra and putting some back in case, y'all get stuck in the house or you can't go to work or whatever. Okay? I just wanted to make sure I clarified that before I got into the rest of the video. And that's pertinent, especially what we're getting ready to talk about. Okay, you guys, before I get started, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel so that you can be updated whenever I release another video. Please share with like-minded individuals who are awakened and who know that things are wrapping up and things are heating up. So please share with like-minded individuals. Please like the video and subscribe if you feel so led. So right now I am still in the midst of a fast, and while I was sleeping, I was taking a nap, and in this dream I was standing facing, it looked like it was like a wood, maybe a wood fence or something in front of me. And I believe there was a table, but I was doing something with my hands. I was picking something, I was plucking something, I was doing something with my hands. And I was standing facing the fence, and I could see the sun, right? And behind me, I felt something kind of nipped the back of my head, or put the back of my head in his mouth. And I said, "I know that's you, Mr. Horsey." And then this horse, it was a black horse, he put his head over my shoulder, right? And I started to pet his nose. And then I turned around and I looked him in his eyes and I told him I loved him. And so this was a black horse. He had kind of like a dusky, like, I think it's the nose is called the muzzle or something. And when I told him I loved him, I was like rubbing on his nose or whatever. But it was a black horse. And then I woke up, right? After turning around and petting his nose and telling him I loved him, I woke up. And so then I started to pray about it. And I started to do some research and realized that the black horse in the book of Revelation is the third horse, and it represents famine. And if you listen to my last video with my last dream in it, that also corresponds to the scripture that I got for my previous dream. And the scripture for that one was Ezekiel 4:10-17. And in that last dream, it also related back to two other scriptures that spoke about the destruction of Babylon and the day of the Lord. Okay, so that dream kind of tied all of that, or all of that was included in the messages of that dream. And what's interesting is, after I released that video, I saw an article talking about Iran getting more cozy with Russia. And then I also saw a separate article where it spoke about Iran possibly looking to join BRICS. I don't know if they already have or they're just thinking about it. But I saw an article that spoke about them looking to join BRICS. And so one part of one of the other scriptures talked about or said, "Prepare against her the nations with the kings of the Medes." Persians and Medes are really the Iranians, okay? And so if I can find that article that I saw, I'll post it down in the description box. So I'm just going to read you the part of Revelation that speaks about the black horse, and just give you just a little bit of information. So the black horse is spoken about in Revelation chapter 6, verses 5-6. "And when he had opened the third seal, I heard the third beast say, 'Come and see.' And I beheld, and lo, a black horse, and he that sat on him had a pair of balances in his hand. And I heard a voice in the midst of the four beasts say, A measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny. And see thou hurt not the oil and the wine." So a penny would be the same as the Greek where it says a denarius, and that's pretty much represents a day's wage. So whatever a day's wage would be, this is what you would get for a day's wage. And from what I read, and I don't know how accurate this is, from the things that I've read, some of the sources say that means that the food will be around 8 times more expensive than it usually is. Now, I don't know where they got that figure from, but I know that in Ezekiel, it spoke about the rationing of food, right? A small ration of food that's having to be spread out across the whole day. A small ration of water that's having to be spread out throughout the whole day, okay? And so in that instance, it was used by God through the prophet Ezekiel to signify to the people that there was a famine coming. Scarcity of food. It was used to show them that a famine was coming. Okay? And going back to the idea of gardening and growing things yourself, even when you look at the story in the Bible where Joseph was in Egypt and they were going from, plenty to hard times, Egypt grew things themselves, right? But then there came a time where that stopped and they had to have some put back. So, they could no longer garden or grow things or do whatever. And because we have so much going on in the land, And because there are wars and, kingdoms rising against kingdom, you never know why that's going to stop or what's going to happen to cause you to no longer be able to do that. So if your gardening is not producing enough, or you're just getting into it and you don't have anything put back, excuse me, please, please, please consider other sources to get what you need. Okay? Even with canned goods, the canned goods are canned in water, so that could help in sense of having fluids. Okay, not just to cook the food or to heat the food up, but to have fluids to drink. And yes, they have salt in them, but salt is needed. Like if you've ever spoken to someone who fasts, on a regular basis, or is doing something like keto or carnivore or something like that, you have to have electrolytes. If not, that could kill you. Like if you're doing some of these ways of eating or diets or even just fasting, you have to replenish those electrolytes, because it can kill you if you don't. You can have heart attacks and strokes. You can throw off your whole system. So in a time where food is scarce and you don't have much, that salt is not going to hurt you, it's going to help you. Okay? And a lot of this stuff is going to be caused by conflict, and it may not necessarily be conflict on this soil, even though that's more than likely coming, but it can be impacted by conflict between nations where America gets its goods. For example, Ukraine. I was just looking it up, and the U.S. gets a lot of things from Ukraine. We get some food products. The majority of what we get, from what I could see, was like heavy metals and pipes and things like that. But there are other countries who rely heavily on Ukraine for their food source. So when you start playing with people's, food, and you have an entity who is disrupting the food coming out from that nation because they're in the process of warring with that nation, those countries that rely heavily on those food sources are going to be in a pickle. Either they're going to have to try to negotiate something with the person who's stopping the food from being exported or coming out, or they're going to have to find another food source, or they're just going to suffer. Okay, they're going to experience famine. Okay, not only that, but when you have these nations pitted against one another and they're joining forces against one another, that can also impact your food. What's coming in, especially when you have a nation that relies so heavily on imports of food, right? And if someone who usually exports their food is like, well, wait a minute, we're not going to be getting this from this country over here because they're over here battling with this country, so we're not going to be able to export anything to you because we got to hold on to it for our people. So it's just so many different factors that can come together to create one big, huge problem. And there's just so much going on behind the scenes. Like when you look at our news media here in this country, yeah, they cover some things, but a lot of stuff you have to go to like international news sources to really find out what's going on. I remember back here shortly after Vermont flooded. Shortly after then, I saw that Washington, D.C. had flooded, and I had no idea. Like, so much stuff is going on that the national news is not covering. The local news is not covering, your local news, meaning, if you live in Texas and something goes on in Iowa, you're not going to see that, even if it's something major, even if it's something destructive, even if it's something that causes a lot of problems. Okay, so it's so much stuff that's going on that you aren't privy to. Okay, but you do know that something is going wrong. Everybody can see that something is going wrong. Okay, and so just going back to the conflict or the war with Ukraine, I just looked up what the U.S. gets from Ukraine, and it says in 2019, of the 1.3 billion in U.S. imports from Ukraine, the top commodity sectors were base metals at 59%, agricultural products 12%, and machinery and mechanical appliances 9.5%. And then when you go and just look up like what is the biggest export out of Ukraine, it says agricultural products are Ukraine's most important exports. In 2021, they totaled 27.8 billion, accounting for 41% of the country's 68 billion in overall exports. Ukraine is normally the world's top producer of sunflower meal, oil, and seed, and the world's top exporter of sunflower meal and oil. And so there are other nations that also export food products to a large degree to the U.S. And so you may want to just keep an eye on where they are in terms of this whole BRICS situation or alliances that they may be forming, just to kind of, keep your eye on the ball to, see where things are. And I just want you to just take note of how lighthearted like the media and the news is concerning these things that are happening. Okay, you don't really see or hear a sense of urgency. It's just like, yeah, this is what's going on, blah blah blah. Okay, now look at this cute little video of this cute little puppy on the baseball field, right? And so you have to have that wisdom and discernment for yourself. And that's where I talk about you praying and fasting and seeking the Most High for yourself. Because one day, even all this internet stuff and communication stuff is going to go down. And you're going to need His help, His guidance, His wisdom to guide you through all of this. You're not going to be able to do it without Him. Okay, I don't care what those people out there in the world tell you, you're not going to be able to do it without Him. Not only for that, but for His protection, because it's so much stuff going on right now. Even in the spiritual realm, there are things that are going on. There's battles and wars and all of this stuff that's happening around us. All of these different forces, entities are gearing up for what's coming, to do their part and have their hand in what's coming. Okay? So they're gearing up, you need to gear up too. you need to gear up too. You need to gear up right along with them. Okay? Okay, you guys, this is longer than I intended, but I think I covered everything that I wanted to cover. So if you like the video, give me a thumbs up. Please share it with like-minded individuals. Please get the word out to your family, friends, and loved ones if you can. I know that people try to speak to their family and friends and they don't get the best response. And so it is what it is. You can't help everybody because people have to decide for themselves. There's not really anything you can do, okay? Because you can't override someone else's free will. So if they don't want to take heed, you do what you need to do to take care of you and yours and keep it pushing, okay? If you can put back a little bit for them, do that. But use your own discretion, because sometimes you think you're doing something good and you end up messing your own self up. So everybody has to have their own discernment for themselves concerning that. Okay, but that's gonna be it, you guys. My voice is going out, so please like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you on the next video. Thanks. Bye.